Hello everyone. Today we are going to read our second chapter, A Fairy with Horns. This short story shows the author's love for animals. Find out what happens after he chances upon a baby goat. Section 1. Though grandfather had provided the household with a variety of pets, my favorite was the little black goat who followed me home from the mustard field across the river bed. Before the monsoon rains arrived, the little Snog River would be a narrow stream, and I liked wading across and then wandering through the fields and tea gardens, watching the women in their bright red saris picking tea and the men and boys moving about among the yellow mustard which stretched away to the distant foothills. I had been sitting on the bank of a small irrigation canal gazing at a couple of herons fishing in muddy water when I felt my elbow being nudged. Looking around, I found by my side a little goat, jet black and soft as velvet, with pretty grey eyes. Neither her owner nor her mother was around. As she continued to nudge me, I looked in my pockets and finding a ginger biscuit, held it out to the goat. She ate it with relish, then sat down beside me and began nibbling at the grass. A little later, when I rose to go, the goat rose too, and when I started walking homeward, she followed me unsteadily, her thin angular legs taking her this way and that. Go home, I said as she danced around me, but home apparently was on the other side of the riverbed and she followed me to its bank. It was obvious that her trembling legs would not stand up to the current, so I took her in my arms and carried her across the stream. When I set her down, hoping she would now find her way home, she remained beside me, rubbing her warm body against my legs. I set out for home at a brisk pace, feeling sure that I would soon leave the youngster behind, but her teetering legs were stronger than I had supposed. She came along at a hop, skip, and jump right up to the gate of our house. There was nothing I could do but carry her in at the gate and present her to grandfather. Not another, said grandmother when she saw the goat in the veranda lapping at a saucer of milk. I have told both of you again and again that I will not tolerate another bird or animal in this house. It was easy to understand grandmother's objections. The recent depredations of Toto, our mischievous red monkey, and the special diet that had to be prepared for a growing young tiger had set grandmother against having any more pets, but it was grandfather who usually brought home the pets, and grandmother, after much grumbling, eventually gave in to his whims. So grandfather had to pretend he had purchased the goat as an investment. Goat's milk is very good for your rheumatism, he told grandmother. This information made her more tolerant of the new pet, though she observed that it would be some time before the goat could give any milk. As all our pets soon acquired names of their own, my goat was named Tinker Bell after the fairy in the story of Peter Pan. And there was something of the fairy about Tinker. She skipped about very daintily, and her feet seemed equipped with springs when she leapt about on the lawn. I tied a little bell to her neck and always knew by its tinkling where she was likely to be. She slept curled up at the foot of my bed and woke me in the morning by licking my feet, a sensation that was soothing and pleasant until Tinker started on my toes, which I found too ticklish. She loved an early morning walk and was in many ways a better companion than a dog. She did not wander off on her own or get into quarrels with cats, stray dogs, and porcupines. The only things she chased were butterflies, and she would tumble into ditches and slither downhill slopes in her eagerness to follow them. Section 2. Goats grow fast, and unlike Peter Pan and the fairies, Tinker had to grow up. To begin with, Tinker Bell developed a neat little pair of horns, suggesting a relationship not to Peter Pan, the boy who never grew up, but to Pan, a Greek god who had goat's feet and horns and the body of a young man. Tinker Bell's appetite began to increase too in the direction of the garden. The leaves of the sweet pea, the nasturtium, and the geranium were her favorites. One morning, grandmother found all her sweet peas destroyed, and she was in a fine frenzy. I blamed a cow and suggested it had got into the garden at night when the gate was left open. Grandmother made no comment, but the look in her eye suggested that she had her own suspicions of who the culprit might be. The next day, the gardener, 80-year-old Duki, who had never made a complaint in his life, came to grandmother to say that he had been bending over the nasturtium bed, putting it right again, when the goat had come up quietly and butted him violently from behind. He refused to do any more work in the garden unless the goat was kept tied up. And by the way, said grandmother, after we had placated her again, when are we going to have that milk we were promised? Grandfather stroked his red beard and tried to look innocent as he replied, Well, I'll try to find a he-goat, my dear, and then we'll have to provide a suitable place for the kids. All that grandmother said was, "Oh," but the way she said it betokened that we would be in for trouble sooner or later. And trouble, like unseasonal rain, came when we were least expecting it. Section 3. Tinker, having discovered the uses to which she could put her horns, soon began using them. The postman and the cook both had occasion to regret having turned their backs on her. This state of affairs came to a climax during the visit of a distant relative of ours, a large lady who was in the habit of bending over flower pots and holding silly little conversations with the flowers. "Oh, you rapturous geranium, you!" she gushed on her first day with us, leaning over a pot in the veranda and eclipsing the sun for a moment. And Tinker, who was tied to the veranda porch, suspecting that the lady was also interested in geranium leaves, decided to butt her out of the way of her favorite snack. It was the end of Tinker's residence with us. The lady insisted she had been badly bruised, though she refused grandfather's offer of first aid. Grandmother ordered the cook to take Tinker straight to the bazaar and sell her at any price to the first customer who came along. Tinker seemed to know she was being taken away forever. Her eyes were quite moist. I stood at the gate and watched her being led away. She kept looking back and bleating, wondering why I was not accompanying her on this particular walk. I could only wave to her and hope that her next owner would be kind and tolerant. When the cook returned without Tinker, he said she had been sold to an old woman. But later he told me in a confidential whisper that he had not sold Tinker but had taken her to the house of a relative where she would be well looked after and where I could see her from time to time. I did visit Tinker occasionally, and in due course I found her with a little white kid. Tinker was giving the cook's relatives over half a seer of milk a day, and they were very pleased with her. She was on good terms with everyone in the house and only butted strangers who bent too low when giving the customary salam. So, this was the reading of our chapter, The Fairy with Horns. If you have any doubt and query, you can ask me in the comment section below. Also, don't forget to check the description box for the links to the other chapters. Thank you, everyone.